This is a J Mix exclusive.
I'm just going to jump on into it, man. Your first professional job was at the world famous Sun Studios. Can you tell us a little bit about working there and what led you there?
Yeah, I had just gotten out of college at that time, and I knew the guy that was buying Sun Studio because it had sat unoccupied for a few years, and he bought the place and reopened it with, revamped it and put new equipment, this and that, and he needed somebody to run it and engineer over there, and I was straight out of college and perfect for the job, and so I got on there, and Sonny hired me, and I pretty much ran the place and did all the engineering over there. And that's where I learned how to do a lot of live instrumentation, a lot of how to record real instruments, B3s and guitars, and, get great old drum sounds and just some real classic stuff that you just wouldn't get at most other studios. So it was a big help for me down the line to have that knowledge and be able to record some of the classic sounds that they used to get over there.
Was it surreal being able to, work at the place that legends such as B.B. King and Elvis have recorded at?
Well, I mean, at the time, I think I was so young, I didn't really get the full gist of really how big it was. But I knew it was a great place. I knew it was a great room. It had a lot of history there, and it had a vibe in there that was just undeniable. And I had a great experience because my favorite band at that time was U2, and U2 came in to record there the Rattle and Hum album and an album for a tribute to Woody Guthrie, and so that was my first taste of actually getting something that was really big and letting you know. It kind of let me know that things in the music business with success was possible, and I think that was a big step for my career when they came in and I actually got a taste to work with a huge super group like that. So that kind of culminated the experience at Sun Studio when I was over there. As you get older, you really appreciate more and more that experience that I had with that time period.
After that, you landed a position at Larrabee Sound. Do you find it odd that other employees from Larrabee Sound came over to Death Row?
Well, no, I don't really, because really only one other guy came over there, and it was Tommy D. You see, I was on staff at Larrabee, and right as I was leaving my staff position at Larrabee, Tommy D came on, and I pretty much trained him how to be an assistant and all of this, how to work the SSL and everything. And he learned fast. He caught right on. He was already knew MIDI real well and keyboards real well, and so he was there for a pretty short time before Greg recognized that he had some talent, and he took him on over there. So after he was working with Death Row for a while, apparently they needed another good engineer over there, and that's when they came back to Larrabee, and I'd been working with Daz a long time, and it just kind of worked its way out like that, where I started doing a lot of Death Row sessions because Daz liked me. That's how I met Snoop, and that's how the people over at Death Row knew me, and they kept hiring me to do a lot of the work that they had overflow on. So I think out of the people that were at Larrabee, because they did the Chronic there, that's how they had a relationship there. But I think me and Tommy D were probably the ones that did the most actual work over at Death Row. A lot of the other staff members at Larrabee did well. Sylvia Massey went on to produce Tool, and Tom Russo went on to engineer and mix Eric Clapton and Paul McCartney and people like that. So we had a good crew over there. But I think as far as the Death Row stuff, it was Tommy D and I that came out of Larrabee.
You said that when you started working at Death Row Records, you were working with Daz and Snoop Dogg. Were you active on the 1993 debut album, Doggy Style?
Actually, I met Snoop while he was working on Doggy Style. I was working with Daz while they were working on Doggy Style. They brought Doggy Style in, and we did some, what I consider just pretty menial legwork on the stuff, So it wasn't real glamorous work. It wasn't like I was mixing or, anything that just seemed glamorous. It was like we were putting stuff together and this and that. So I don't even really count that, to tell you the truth. You know what I mean? I think really when I started doing real work with Snoop was, right after Murder Was a Case and was on the Doggy Style, the Dog Father album. And that's when we really started doing a whole lot of big things.
That album was released as Snoop was leaving Death Row or shortly after. Was that album completed and finished by Snoop in order for a Death Row release by the time Snoop left?
I think once Dre left, once Pac was killed, then I think that it was kind of obvious that Death Row was taking a turn more for the worse because they had been dominating so big for the few years. And I just think it was kind of obvious to everyone that, this might be what's known as like a sinking ship. And everybody kind of wanted off, And so I think, I'm not sure what was going through Snoop's mind as far as getting off of Death Row while he was making that album or anything, but I know that, it was pretty obvious that everybody was going different places. Daz, Corrupt, everybody was getting deals all over the place. All these people were getting different deals, and the beautiful part was that they kept using me to do all their engineering and mixing on their albums, even when they went to these other labels. So that's kind of also how my career branched out to work with other labels and other artists and things like that, was the breaking from Death Row. But, as far as what Snoop was thinking, I'm sure it's in the back of his mind somewhere what he wanted to do. I remember that when he was making The Last Meal, it was the same type of thing. He was making that album, and he knew that was going to be his last album on that label. I think he was on No Limit at the time, and he used to even joke. He'd say, this is the last time that they're going to eat off me. So, I think that's where that Last Meal title came from and everything, too. So,
You spoke briefly about Dre leaving Death Row. Do you know why Dr. Dre was unhappy with Death Row? And I'm asking you to speculate,
Yeah, again, speculation. I can't really get into the minds of what they were thinking at the time, and it would be like you say, a lot of speculation to kind of put that on somebody's thoughts. But I remember how I felt. My experience was that I was there. I was on this incredible, high-moving, fast-paced label that Dre had just been a big part of, and that they were getting Pac, and they were getting, Snoop was coming out. It was just a huge thing. And then all of a sudden, it was like Dre was leaving Death Row. He was pissed, and he was leaving, I think probably, close to $50 million, if not more, behind.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, wow, that's really something. I think it must be, I thought it was just courageous of Dre to just go you know what, forget about that money. I don't even care about that money. I'm going to make 50, 100 million more, 200 million more, which he did. And it was very impressive. So I think that was my experience with Dre leaving. It was just my thinking wow, how could he leave all this money behind? It must have been something really bad, or he had some really good future plans coming up, and he wasn't even tripping on that old money, which I learned to understand now in my career is, you sometimes have problems with money, and or maybe people owe you money or this or that, you're going to go after it. I'm pretty tenacious about getting it, but at some point, you can spend your energy a lot more wisely going after new money and making new money instead of just rehashing all this old money that you might have coming to you. I think I learned a big lesson from that whole thing. That's what I took out of that.
DJ Mix exclusive.
Whatever, shut up.